Yes. Here it is. Global 3.16. Write it in your notebooks. That's the works. We're going to cover the sociology and anthropology of Judaism today, kids. It's going to be amazing. Look at Jeremy. He's pulling in tight. He almost made my phone fall off the cart. It's amazing. All right, we'll fade the music out. That's how I roll. Thank you for joining me today. This is the first ever live performance, a live studio audience. Can't show you the studio audience, got to keep the kids off the camera, but we got a live studio audience, so I might even be able to get some interaction today as I'm teaching and filming. I'm pretty pumped. I'm pumped up about it. Right? I mean, if only we had a student that was dating a 27-year-old, we'd be all set today. It'd be amazing. All right, anyway. Come on over here. Sociology of Judaism and the anthropology of Judaism. Now, we've talked a little bit about, right? We've got some background knowledge. We covered the history of Judaism a little bit. We kind of covered, like, the story of Moses. You don't want to overdo it, right? Like, you can't make the kids sick at home there, Dr. Cameraman, right? So if you want to just maybe hold on the board a little bit, and then it's okay if I walk off the screen. You don't have to follow me all the time, but maybe every once in a while. You know, my cameraman's getting, this is like cameraman training today in our first ever live presentation. All right, so let's talk about, which one do you want to do first? I don't really care, kids. Anthropology or sociology? Sociology. You're a left to right kind of guy. Look at you. All right, perfect. So he's going left to right. We're going to talk sociology, and of course this is the interaction, the social interaction. And any time that we think like a sociologist, we almost inevitably have to think social hierarchy, right? Social hierarchy is something that sociologists study. And so the social hierarchy of Judaism is going to end up looking something like this. And we alluded a little bit to this when we talked about the history of Judaism. We said the Pharaoh, right? The Pharaoh of Egypt was not really a big fan of this new monotheistic religion because the Pharaoh had been telling people that he was a god. And he kind of like was rich and wealthy and famous because he was a god. And the Pharaoh didn't like this new monotheistic religion creeping in. Well, Judaism comes along and it reestablishes sort of like the pecking order. So socially, if you are Jewish, you believe socially the following. The top of the social pyramid would be Jewish people, which we will refer to as Jews. Right? If you are Jewish, then you are a Jew. And if you are Jewish, then you celebrate this religion of Judaism, right? Sort of like all interchangeable. But only about 0.02% of the population. So that's like really tiny. Or maybe it was 0.2, not 0.02. 0.2% of the population of the world was Jewish back during this time period, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. So a very, very tiny percent of the population was Jewish. And because of the relationship that they had with this monotheistic God who had made this deal, this covenant with them, the Jewish people were the chosen people. Meaning, now I'm going to use the word heaven, but in the Jewish religion, there really isn't this idea of heaven. What we'll refer to it as is like the kingdom of God. Now, in your mind, if you think of that like heaven because you happen to be Christian, like I understand that, right? But in the Jewish religion, it works a little bit like this. If you were one of God's chosen people, right, then you were Jewish. And how did you become Jewish? We covered this in a previous class. Kids at home can chime in too. How does one become Jewish? It's not by magic wand. We did cover this, didn't we? I'm almost certain we did.
By your parents?
No. It had nothing to do with your appearance.
Parents.
Oh, by your parents. I thought you said by your appearance. Oh, you got to dress Jewish to be Jewish. No, by your parents, she said, of course. So much for my funny jokes. Nobody laughed at my funny joke. Hey, in the back, lift up your head, please. Thank you. So, yes, you are Jewish by your parents, particularly your mother, right? So you're born into it, and that makes you one of these chosen people. Cameraman, watch what you're doing here. Make me some space. I'm coming back in front. And if you are one of the chosen people, then when you die, this is a little bit different, like in the Christian sense, which we haven't covered Christianity yet. It's down the road. But the idea of a Christian heaven is when you die, like you go to heaven. In the Jewish sense of the kingdom of God, you die, and then your soul literally like lays there. Okay? Like kind of like buried, if you will. Your soul kind of lies in state, and then eventually the Messiah will come and the kingdom of God will start again, and that is when your soul will rise and you can enjoy being in the kingdom of God. So it's a little bit like heaven, but it's not heaven. Are you following me on that? So there's a waiting period, right? There's a really long wait, and there's a lot of trials in order to join God in the kingdom of God if you're Jewish. Okay, so like when you die, there's a really long waiting period waiting for the Messiah to come. Okay. Now, the rest of the pyramid, which is, let's see, I'm not very good at math, but I think that's 99.8% of the people. So that's almost everybody. Do these people get to enjoy the kingdom of God? No, they're out, right? This monotheistic God, at the early stages of Judaism, this monotheistic God only made a covenant, a pact, a deal with the Jewish people that they were the chosen ones and they would enjoy the kingdom of God eventually. And so 99.8% of the people were heathen, right? They were like polytheistic non-believers. And they would not, there's no kingdom of God for them. Well, let's just think about this socially here, kids. All right? I want you to think about this socially. If 99.8% of the population cannot enjoy the benefits of this relationship with a monotheistic God, how are they going to feel about the small group of people that are saying that they're the chosen ones that are going to go enjoy this benefit? If you're Jewish, you got this great payoff, right? You get to go enjoy the kingdom of God in the afterlife. But if you're not Jewish, you're out. And 99.8% of the people were out. How are they going to feel about that? They're going to be happy about it? They're going to be upset about it? How are they going to feel about it?
Mad.
They're going to be mad. Yes. And so socially, here's what happens. And now we're living here in 2021. Maybe you understand through your education, historically, Jewish people have been discriminated against, right? They're a minority group. And this dates all the way back, right? If you're only passing on the religion through birth, then obviously you're going to be in a minority situation, right? There's no way to expand the number of people in the religion except by just having more and more children. Like you can't go and get more followers, so to speak, right? So you're always going to have Jewish people throughout history as an extreme minority group. And they're always going to have, right, these Jewish groups are always going to have the belief that they are the chosen people, and that's kind of elitist, right? And so socially, a sociologist would say that the Jewish people are seen as elitist, and that doesn't necessarily sit well with a large percentage of the population that finds themselves on the outs, right, as the out group. So they're traditionally seen as elitist. It has led to discrimination over time. It leads to misunderstanding, right? Because oftentimes, sort of like a little bit like the caste system in Hinduism, where like people in the same caste only hung out with other people in the same caste. The sort of same thing happens socially here. Many times the Jewish people are only seen as wanting to do business with or hang out with other. How might they be viewed? That they only want to hang out with, when I say they, I'm talking about these Jewish people, they might only want to hang out with or marry other Jews, right? And then socially they become disconnected from the rest of society a little bit because of that. So that leads to discrimination. They're seen as elitist. They sometimes only will marry or hang out with each other. And so traditionally, historically, for this sociological reason, there has been a lot of discrimination against this minority group, and there's sort of no way for the Jewish religion to not be a minority group, if you follow me on that. Okay, so that's the social interaction piece. I think I like to teach this because I think it's important in understanding historically. When you get to 10th grade, you're going to cover, of course, the Holocaust in Germany, where Jewish people were sort of scapegoated and blamed for a lot of problems that weren't really their fault. And it was easy to scapegoat them because they were a minority group that didn't necessarily fit in with the rest of society. And they were kind of like outcasts doing their own thing, like almost in their own caste. In Germany, and so it was easy to blame them. So this sociological explanation of how the religion sort of feeds that helps us understand maybe that moment in Germany when Hitler was in the rise, when you get to 10th grade. It will also help us understand some other instances in history, like in Russia, there was these things called pogroms. You'll learn about them when you get to 10th grade. So again, it was more discrimination and scapegoating of Jewish people. And this starts to kind of explain the root cause of that, right? This explains why the Jewish people are always minority groups and why they were always seen as social outcasts and not really appreciated by maybe the majority of the population. Okay, so that's the sociology piece. Let's move to the anthropological piece. So I'm going to erase this now, and we're going to move over under anthropology. I'm just going to make some room. Everybody got what you need to off the board? Kids at home, you got a copy down? If not, the video will eventually be up because my cameraman is doing an awesome job. First day on the job, really doing well. How are you going to get the notes down?
The video.
Double duty. Look at you, cameraman and note taker extraordinaire. Let's move into the culture of the Jewish people. The Holy Book, that's where we want to focus. The Holy Book of Judaism. I think this was a question in your homework. What was the Holy Book of Judaism called? Kids at home, you might have the answer more readily in your notebook. I see some kids in class are looking for it. Some other kids in class are hiding in their hoods. Can you take off your hood, please? Thank you. I'd love to see that wonderful hat of yours. He's got a hood on over a hat. I mean, that's unbelievable. No kids on camera. No kids on camera. What is the Holy Book of Judaism called? It was in your homework. What? You can say it. Oh, I have one student saying the Bible. Well, you're not totally wrong. It's the first 5 books of the whole Old Testament of the Bible. So the Holy Book for Jewish people is, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but it has its own name. Kids at home, anybody, first 5 books of the Old Testament are called? My kids in class are drawing blanks. Somebody at home's got to help. A, B, H, K, somebody. D, G. Well, I guess you're gonna make me give it to you? I don't want to have to give it to you. What if I give, let's play Hangman. not ringing any bells.
I know what it is.
You know what it is? Say it.
Torah.
The Torah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are the Torah. And the Old Testament is part of the Bible. Now, this reinforces our idea, right? Like we taught you during the history lesson, this monotheistic God is the same monotheistic God for all monotheistic religions. And so Christians use the Bible as their holy book, and this sort of proves that it's the same God because Jewish people use the first 5 books as their holy book, and then the Bible extends, and then along will come Christianity with this more extended holy book called the Bible. So they kind of derive their holy passages, right, and their religious thinking all stems from the same holy book. The Torah is what it's called in the Jewish religion. And just sort of like to try and keep it a little bit more interesting, the Torah contains a lot of these food rules, right, that have made their way. Some of these Jewish food rules have found their way into our culture. So, for instance, Jewish people in the book of Leviticus, which is part of the Torah, Jewish people are not supposed to eat what? Hey, sir, let's make sure that we're taking the notes, please. You got to have the notes, kids. This is how you get the points to pass the class. If you don't pass the class, you do it again next year. So make sure we're taking the notes. It's easy. You got these food rules. So Jewish people are not supposed to eat certain foods. Do we know any?
Meat?
It's a specific type of meat.
Beef.
Not beef. That's Hindus didn't eat cows because they were sacred. Michaela, no pork.
Pork, yeah, pork.
No eating pork, rabbit, shellfish. Now you might go, well, what's up with those food rules? These are actually, we've learned these old religious rules actually ended up having some scientific backing behind them. Pigs, pork, right? Pigs carried a disease 3,000 years ago. In fact, even as recently as 100 years ago, pigs carried a disease called trichinosis. If you ate raw pork or undercooked pork, a human could get trichinosis and it could kill you, right? And so what was happening 3,000 years ago? They didn't have refrigerators, right? They didn't have stoves and microwaves. A lot of the meat that they were eating was undercooked or cooked over literally like campfires. And that pork wasn't cooked well enough and people were getting trichinosis and dying. So the religious rule was like, oh my God, the pig is like a filthy, dirty, like satanic animal. They didn't believe in Satan, right? But like this evil animal that's killing people, don't eat pork, right? And that became a religious rule. It actually had some scientific backing, but they didn't understand that 3,000 years ago. Shellfish. Anybody here have a shellfish allergy? Clams, scallops, stuff like that. You know, that can make people sick too. A lot of humans are allergic to shellfish and it can kill them. It makes them very sick. And so the book of Leviticus says, hey, no shellfish. Here's one last cultural thing. Reading. The importance, I'm going to get buzzed. I want you to just stay through the bell just for a second. The importance of reading and education, right? The Jewish people really stress reading and education. It's very important culturally to them. Okay? And the reason, of course, is if you could read, then you could read the Torah. And if you could read the Torah, then you understood all the religious rules to make you a good Jewish citizen, right? And have a good, strong relationship with that monotheistic God. And that is it. So the importance of reading and doing well in school would be culturally important. Thank you very much. Pack it up. For those of you that aren't taking notes while I'm putting it on the board, you're doing yourself a disservice because if you don't pass the class, you get to do it again next year. That's the great news.
And you're going to want to see those notes by the end of this week.
You got it. You got it. Is this the 5 week this week? Unbelievable. Time is flying. Later.